But here there is something that I can use, and that is this sweeping arm here, which is like a kind of reaction wood that's grown. When I start a cold chainsaw, I like to let it run for a few seconds with the choke on before I start revving up the engine, cutting with it, because I've got an idea it makes the engine faster.
You can certainly see how the fibres follow the line, which is good, it makes it nice and strong. I'm trying to be very careful with my chainsaw. I don't really want to hit the rocks, but you know, inevitably it will hit the rocks. I've never done that before without hitting rock, so I'm really pleased with that. I'll use that as the tap, the tenon, so the wood will be here, and there'll be a tenon on that one, if I've got space. Well, that's very cool. amazing. I got 2 pieces out. And I have hit something, I don't know what. The damage isn't too great, but I've hit something definitely. Squared around. This, you see this slightly different square, but not very much. So that one's squared up there, and then this one. See the difference? It's like a degree, 1 degree difference. So that won't make a difference, I don't think. I can always actually just tip that over very, very slightly. I've done the same thing on the other side. I just squared around the object. So it'll be between those two. So there's not very much difference. There's just that they're not completely in parallel because I didn't cut them. When you put it through a jointer, it's not a thicknessing plane, so they're not necessarily parallel. See, these are a bit slightly thinner than there. But I've got those. I've got a square now on both sides, and there'll be a corner here, so there's 0 point. Now I think what I'll do is I'll put them slightly into the timber, a few centimetres, just 3 centimetres, 4 maybe, and then maybe just a little bit of a mortise and tenon. Well, I haven't quite decided yet, so I'll come back to that later. A little burr there, that's good. You can see I've hit something on the left hand teeth on those ones. And the right side is blunt, but I need to do the riders, but I like to use a jig for that, doing the riders, because that's I like that to be very consistent with the height of the. No, actually, that one's no good as well. I like that to have a nice. I mean, I don't remember very well these things, so I do check from time to time on YouTube for people that are more experienced than me with these things. People that use chainsaw absolutely every day, like fucking Billy. I've got one called Andy Reynolds that I look at, an English guy who is a bit of a chainsaw boffin and other things as well. Kind of, he's like the English version of a prepper. They're not really preppers, but he's just someone who's very self-sufficient. Self-reliant, I should say, not self-sufficient. He's very good. You can look him up. So I do check. There was another one as well, but I found it once, but I've never found it again, which talked very much about the anatomy of every aspect of the tooth. And I do look at them. There, I think I might have gone a bit too deep. So when you go a little bit too deep, the cutting point, it gets what's called a crow's beak. Kråkenebb. That's like the Norwegian. I'm translating from Norwegian. So I'm just pulling up slightly in diagonal to reduce that. I remember Bucking Billy was talking about the gusset, about getting down into the gusset. But you have to bear in mind that he's after a different kind of cutting quality than I'm after, and it could be that there are some differences in what we're actually trying to achieve. So just remember that things are not equal on YouTube. Different craftsmen are after different results. So I noticed, for example, that sometimes people working with softwoods like I'm using, these spruce and pine, are trying to get advice from people who are working with hardwoods, or chisels and the ways to cut and things like that. And I don't think you can do that. I don't think all of the skills for hardwoods are transferable to softwoods. They behave differently. And just because softwoods are soft, it doesn't really mean they're soft. Actually, I think that it's much more difficult to do mortise and tenons with softwood than it is with something like oak or ash. I mean, the oak and the ash are harder, but they're also more alike in the different directions of the grain. Whereas spruce is very strong in one direction and very weak in another, which makes it very difficult to work with. You have to use the tools quite differently. You have to cut at different angles. You're after a different, well, you know, you have to use the tools differently and cut with them differently. And you should certainly not compare joinery with carpentry. Why would you do that? It's like saying that there's someone's Ford Siesta or Ford Sierra, say. It's actually a real car. Siesta, probably a better name than Fiesta, isn't it? Anyway, why would you compare that with a formula racing car? You just wouldn't. It doesn't mean, say, the people that have made the family car have done a worse job of their engineering task. Of course they haven't. They've done an amazing job of their engineering task to produce something to the right budget that suits the people that are going to buy them correctly. And that's the same with handwork. Why would a carpenter employ cabinet making skills or, you know, criteria when they're doing carpentry? A carpenter that uses cabinet making criteria is not a good carpenter, because what they produce would be as expensive as cabinets. We've lost that a little bit because we're going back to handwork because we're curious, because we miss it. It's like something from the olden days that we've lost, and so we do things which are ineffective, or putting in too much work in the wrong place. And we can do that because we've got the surplus to do it. As long as someone's paying for it, you can do that. But I find that with my customers, they don't like to pay big bills for things. Of course, no one likes to pay the bigger bills. It's expensive, and if I make my work too expensive, they won't buy it. I mean, I have customers that use different builders. They sometimes use me for the stuff that's to do with restoration, and then I'll use someone else for doing other things. And they're very aware of how much it costs, each different way of building, or the different kind of builder that they use. They know which ones are cheating them and being lazy and not working. And they know which ones are expensive but giving them a good product, something that they can be really happy with afterwards. And they know which ones are just getting a job done that they need to have done. It doesn't need to have either a high price or a high level of skill. Now, I'm not saying that I'm particularly skillful at these things. I'm quite skillful, enough to be able to get the job, the work, to do the work. You know, I get the work doing this. I'm a specialist rather than particularly good at this. There are lots of specialists in Norway that can do this work, and they're very good. They have to be very good at it. They have to have a certain level of skill to be able to do it in the first place. That goes without saying. Just imagine after all that cutting, I've probably not got much petrol left. This isn't actually petrol, it's whatever it's called. They call it environmental, milieubenzin, they call it environmental fuel. I doubt very much it's any more environmentally friendly than the other. They say it's better for the soil as well. I don't know if I believe that either. Marketing things. Who knows what's true in marketing? Very little bit, but it's most likely. But I'm not going to cut all the way through because I don't want to cut into the timber. I'm just using that as a workbench. I don't want to cut into my nice timber frame, so I'll cut to halfway and then I'll turn it over. Well, it's quite nice. It's difficult to tell, a little bit difficult to tell, because this kind of material behaves fairly differently to normal because of obviously the way it grows, so it feels different cutting it. So it's not really cutting as well. I need to do the depth gauges. This is a little bit awkward, all of this, because when you're filming, you're thinking about where the camera angle is. If I was just working without a camera, I'd probably be doing this much more effectively. Oh, it's water soluble, that one. That's quite good, that. What's happened to my pencil? So the difference is this is 9.6. Up here it's 10.4. It's 8mm difference. So I'll go from one edge. I'll do a tap at 5. I'll do a tenon at 5 centimetres. 4.8 in. I don't even know really if this is necessary to have a mortise and tenon on this. I need to think a little bit about it, or do a little bit more research. But it can't harm to do one. And I'm not sure. I'm going to cut a long mortise now, but I probably won't have such a long mortise. I don't know. It really depends on if you want to plug it. You see, I don't know if I'm going to plug it. It might be not a good idea. It might be a good idea. I don't want to plan it too much really, because it's too time consuming to do too many plans. I kind of know which direction I'm going in, and that's good enough. Nothing I'm doing now can't be hidden or changed. Even that I have a little bit here, that might be useful, that little bit. Maybe not, I don't know. Yeah, I lower down there because I want the saw at the level of my thigh, because it's less hard work that way. I can rest the saw on my body a bit more useful. That's the original from when I was cutting it out of the tree. So it's a kind of a bit of a mistake, really. I've made this mortise very long. It doesn't need to be that long, but I don't know what length it needs to be. So but to start with it long, I can cut it a bit, I can put more off it at any time I like. But I think that is quite good. This is down, that's up, you know, or the horizontal. These could probably be a bit thinner, I think. These can be thinner as well. I cut a little bit too deep with the chainsaw there, but I think that's just fine. It's not quite parallel with the actual object, so this doesn't actually work because it's slightly too thick. So we could go down to 3.5, 4. It's going to be a little bit more than 4 because this is slightly bigger. Thanks very much for watching. Thanks to channel subscribers for coming back and watching more of these films. And if you enjoyed the film, click the like button and share it with a friend. And welcome back to another vlog part in a day or two. All the best. Bye bye. Should be able to do something with that.